Hang in there, it is!
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to another episode of The Smylie Show, coming off a CJ Cup Byron Nelson week. Still trying to wrap my head around that combined tournament title, that Frankenstein of a tournament title, and also a LIV Golf Singapore week that is going to be worth discussing because of how that leaderboard shook out, and the man who walked away with the trophy, who's looking to defend another one of those trophies in a couple weeks. But let's just start off with, you're at the beach. I'm fresh off of getting absolutely doused by a monsoon at Tobacco Road. Got about 6 solid holes in before they called us in. How are we feeling? A good, relaxing weekend with the fam?
Yeah, no, I had one of my good buddies from college, Franco Castro. He came down with his girlfriend, and we luckily, I'm not a lobster. He kind of turned out to be a lobster. He kind of felt like he could defeat the sun. But the sun is undefeated.
The sun is notoriously tough. Imagine thinking you're tougher than the sun. That's a tough go. I didn't used to always be a sunscreen guy, and then quickly realized I don't think I'm going to outrun the sun. So yeah, tough scene for Franco. Hope we got some aloe. I'm
in a good place. Yeah, in a great place. I mean, the weather's been so good. Just been really nice to kind of regroup a little bit. Had a couple people say enjoyed the pod while we've been down here. So shout out to the listeners down here at the beach as well. You'll like this because we were coming off the beach at about let's say 1 o'clock, and we're walking past the pool, and underneath the shaded area, it's like 17 kids, all in different chairs, all with sound machines, all taking their afternoon naps, and all of their parents just like taking it in on their cell phones or just like trying to get a breather. But I was thinking about this vacationing is like you look so much forward to it with your spouse and then with your family. And then I realized it's like, wow, if it's just you're just moving home to a different place, and it's still just as hard, but you are in paradise. So you're like, okay, at least I'm getting sun. At least I'm like watching my kid have a lot of fun, but it's still very hard.
This weekend was we were at a wedding in the Outer Banks, and we had the bright idea of saying, hey, we should Amanda's mom was in town, like she'll come to the beach with us and we'll bring our son, as if like that was going to provide some sort of great relief from the day-to-day rigors of parenting. Spoiler alert, it did not. Also, our son was sick, so it was the most brutal scenario. Like we got maybe an hour of respite. We took him to the beach, and we made sandcastles, and he splashed around the water, and he was like really happy for that 1 hour of the day. And then the rest was just like, this is more exhausting. And also now I'm run down because when I'm not watching him, I'm like drinking and staying up late and dancing. And so, yeah. And then driving 4.5 hours to get caught in the rain in Sanford, North Carolina. And now here I am sitting in front of you, just venting, rambling on. But I tell you what, let me just I'll segue off that. I'll make a little natural transition here because I did my favorite part of the CJ Cup Byron Nelson was after Taylor Pendrith won, holding his son, watching his son try to grab the windsock on the microphone while doing the interview with Amanda Balionis. That was really happy for Taylor. Really, kind of wild ending to that tournament. So let's just kind of start there with, it looked like Ben Coles had this thing done and dusted after going birdie 16, 17. And then I don't even know what to make of the mess he made around the green. Still had a putt to send it to a playoff and missed that. Uncharacteristic for Ben.
Yeah, he had a good putt on 18, but you're right. Ian Baker kind of said it exactly how you should have. It's just a lot of pressure. I think the big mistake was just not giving yourself a putt. Didn't matter about getting it close. Just give yourself a look. Worst case scenario, Taylor 2 putts, which is what happened. You go in a playoff, live to fight another day. But walking off that green, you could see, man, how he was just like, what just happened? And it looks like he had a good putt to me, because I always watch, like a good 3-point shooter when they I don't ever watch the ball in the air when a guy's shooting a jump shot. I just watch, are they sticking their follow through, and did it come off right? Like, did they like, is it off balance jump shot? And with his 6-footer, I was like, okay, is his head going to stay still? And is he going to hold his finish? Is he get started on his line? And all those things happen. I just think you misread it, which you can't be upset about that. Like, we miss reputts all the time. It was just the mistakes, obviously, that kind of compounded before that led him to the position of, I have to make a 6.5-footer for par now to put some pressure on Taylor.
And, in the interest of full disclosure here, because, we were doing other things this weekend, and we were, of course, checking in on the tournament and trying to, keep abreast of what was happening on tour. But at the same time, kind of looking at the way it was shaping up and saying, not the most entertaining tournament in the world. And I think, we had an extended discussion last week comparing the team event on the PGA Tour, the Zurich Classic, with the thrilling finish in Adelaide and watching the Aussie Ripper team come out ahead, and just comparing and contrasting the nature of those events and what they're meant to be. And again, this week, I know it probably feels like we're beating a dead horse here, but I think you have to kind of look across over to LIV and compare it to, what we saw on the PGA Tour, and just kind of try to make some sort of takeaway from it. And so I think where we kind of started was it just feels like further confirmation of the thing that we've talked about on numerous pods, which is we don't need this many golf tournaments, right? Like, this was such a good indication of, if we had all these guys back together, this event, the CJ Cup, the Byron Nelson event, could be this, whatever the regular tour is, the B tour, beneath the sort of platinum tour, beneath this sort of marquee series of 18 or 20 events or whatever it becomes, that we all have to tune into because we know the best players are going to show up for those. It's just tough to get excited about this when this is being sold as the A event.
You're exactly right. And I didn't get to watch any of the LIV Golf events. I haven't watched many of it throughout the year. I always check the leaderboards after every day to see mainly how my cliques are doing. By the way, we got a podium. We got a podium finish.
Week for the cliques.
We got a podium
Props.
finish for the cliques. But then I sent you a screenshot of the top 10 guys on the leaderboard, and man, that's like the best looking leaderboard they've had since I can remember, like, checking leaderboards for LIV. I mean, just Brooks Koepka, Cam Smith 1-2, and then you got a bunch of other guys like DJ down the list. John Rahm finished in the top 10. So it's just hard to compare. Like, when you see that leaderboard, then you go and look at the PGA Tour leaderboard, which for the most part, I haven't been a big leaderboard comparison guy in all of this. I just kind of try to follow the good storylines of the PGA Tour and like what the meaning is behind every single week and finish that the players have. But this one stuck out like a sore thumb, man, just because this is kind of what I felt like LIV's strategy was last year, which is let's have our golf tournaments the weeks in the B Tour events for the PGA Tour, to where we can really get some momentum to get more people to be like, okay, don't want to watch this week because it's not an important week for the PGA Tour. Come watch us over here and just hang out and try to get more fans in doing so. And this year they've kind of taken a little different strategy, going head to head, for instance, against the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And they did that trying to do the same weekend of the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So there's been instances this year which they try to compete. But to me, if they're going to continue to be a disruptor, it's like if this week would have been, let's say, in the States in New York against the Byron Nelson, it would have made huge headlines because I'm sure people would have watched it. The crowds would have been amazing. But, being in Singapore, I mean, I've watched a couple highlights, but I mean, nothing more than that.
It doesn't. I have so many questions about the way the LIV business is being run, and I'm not saying that in I could do a better way. I just legitimate curiosities around their strategy behind some of the decisions they make, because I think the way what you said makes 100% sense. It's like, if the goal is to pull audience away on softer spots in the PGA Tour schedule, those should probably be the domestic tournaments. Those should be the American tournaments because then they fit into American television time slots rather than like watching in the middle of the night in Singapore, or I guess that re-airs on the CW at some point, or you can replay the feed that was on YouTube. I don't know. Like, and I get too that part of the appeal of LIV, or at least what they're selling us on right now, is a sort of global tour. You know, they're going to different places, and Singapore is one of those places where they want to have a presence. You know, they're aligned with the Asian tour, so that part of it makes sense. But it's the strategy is confusing to me of like, don't put, you know, LIV Vegas up against the WM on Super Bowl weekend. Like, do LIV Vegas this week, you know, put Singapore that weekend if you want to try to go head to head and pull audience in different times where you're not going head to head with the Super Bowl or the WM, but you're playing on the same weekend. So that one will forever confuse me. And I think, you know, to kind of further that point a little bit and talking about the decisions they make and the way they've structured some things, we were talking a little bit about just golf course selection, venue selection, you know, as a piece of the whole puzzle of how to get people interested or excited in these events. And I think this weekend, you know, we famously kid about TPC Craig Ranch on this show a number of times. But I mean, look at where we ended up with both events. We had, I think it's Sentosa in Singapore. We had two courses that were just getting absolutely lit up. Both courses taking on a lot of water, so it was ball in hand. So the scoring conditions were even better. And there was just no real intrigue on that front. So then you kind of go back to where we started, the leaderboard, where it's like, okay, there are a bunch of you know, no offense to the PGA Tour leaderboard, but a bunch of names that most people are not familiar with. And then you go down, you know, the LIV leaderboard, and it is Brooks Koepka, Cam Smith, you know, Mark Leishman, Taylor Gooch, Tyrrell Hatton, Thomas Peters, Dustin Johnson, Joaquin Niemann, I mean, and so on and so forth. And I think, you know, that's kind of, I think I both have a question that comes off that, which is like, is it compelling given the names alone? It sounds like your answer to some degree is yes. I also have questions with relation to, like, you know, looking at some of the LIV venues and wondering why they haven't made more of a concerted effort to lock down more interesting venues. I know they have some that are former tour stops, but that feels like one that if they could strike some partnerships with some really notable, exciting golf courses that have name brand value, that's one way to get people in the door and say, yeah, I'd rather watch that than like TPC Craig Ranch, for example.
Yeah, no. And I think, like, for instance, Sentosa, I've played in Singapore. I've played that golf course. Really good golf course. I know there's 36 holes here, so I don't know which one of the two that they did play, but amazing greens, good course. Crowds there were always like kind of okay the year that I played, but obviously the field that they have now is totally different than the Singapore Open that I played in. But to your point, kind of referencing some of what maybe their strategy might be. So their next event's in Houston, and if you ever watch the Houston Open, the golf course that comes to mind is where they always played it over the last 20, 30 years, it seemed like. That course that was called Redstone, that is now the Golf Club of Houston. That's where they're playing. So there's another event that's like, okay, the audience and just the general golf fans, when they turn the TV on, they're like, oh, yeah, I've seen this golf course. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. And they've done that with a couple places, Mayakoba, Greenbrier, and I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm missing.
Valderrama in Spain.
Valderrama in Spain, but that's not a PGA Tour course. But to your, you know, just generally speaking here, I think there is a lot of golf courses in which the golf fan's familiar, but I will say that Bolingbrook, the golf club that I'm not familiar with in Chicago, seems to be a very odd choice, that they kind of needed a bang going out. It's like, hey, we're going to a big city. We're getting a big time venue. That seemed to be like, this had to be probably the last option, I would imagine, for them to settle in on this place that I'm not familiar with. It could be great. I could be speaking out of turn here. I'm sure Chicago people are like, wait, this is sick. But I think of Chicago Golf Club. I think of Medina. Like, these are legit venues that people know about. I know nothing about this place. I'm sure it'd be a great hot dog and a great beer and a great 18 holes, but I don't know anything about it. So I think that just kind of tying a bow on the strategy that LIV Golf executives and their team trying to figure out a schedule. And this has kind of gone back in the last couple of years of it's kind of been a bit all over the place. Like Brooks Koepka even's like, when's our schedule coming out?
Yes.
It seems like they've been a little off the ball on trying to figure out exactly where we're going to play. What the whole thing has been about. Let's play global. Let's grow the game. But it's just not hitting, like these events that are out of the country are just not getting, besides Australia and Adelaide, which was a huge hit, right, Charlie? Like that to me was like a massive win. But even the events in like the United Kingdom where they played at what's the golf course that they played? It seemed like
Centurion. The
yes.
one in London, yeah.
Yes, I watched that first one. The crowds were whatever. So I don't know. I get like you need to grow the game. You need to keep playing in other places, but it seems like it needs to fall in that same formula of Adelaide, in which you need to go to places that that are going to be big hits. And right now, like it seems like they're just kind of going to where either maybe where the dollar bills are, because I've heard that Singapore was like funded by like Visit Singapore or something like that. So maybe they're doing things to try to increase their ROI on all this. I don't know. I don't know the business model that they have, but it seems like the schedule in which they picked to your original just kind of point that you were making. Yes, it's just been a bit all over the place.
Yeah, a little disjointed. And there were comments that Greg Norman made, I believe, to Bloomberg that you and I discussed, leading up to this episode, where he was talking about, maybe providing a little bit of insight into the booking of these venues, the structure of the schedule, and just talking about how the goal would be long term to create something equivalent to the tour's TPC network. Creating a series of LIV-owned golf courses that feel like, to kind of go back to what we discussed last week, that feel like home games for each team. Whether that's in Adelaide, it's the Grange or an equivalent to the Grange, or however you want to go about that. Just like this is Ripper's home course, and then we go do that every single place for these other teams. And I definitely like that. I wonder if there's a more aggressive strategy, to be had or in the cards for them. Like I know at one point, part of what was being discussed in terms of this whole negotiation between the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour and the PIF was them wanting to come in and buy and own existing U.S. golf structures, like buying Pebble Beach resorts. Now, that would be a very big one and a very expensive one, and one that I highly doubt they'd be able to get a real return on investment, in thinking about all the complications they'd encounter as part of that process and people who don't want to go there anymore, things like that. But if you're willing to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in acquiring players because those represent shots across the PGA Tour's bow, I mean, can you imagine? And again, I don't ever think in a million years Pebble Beach Resorts would sell, to the PIF and to the Saudis. But just imagine a splash like that, where it's like, hey, guess what? We're not doing U.S. Opens or the AT&T Pro-Am anymore at Pebble Beach because this is now a LIV exclusive course. And the amount of just curiosity factor viewers that would attract if that was in their hands. Like, again, I don't think it would ever happen with Pebble, but like certainly there have to be things that fit that profile, right? Like, other resorts or other places where historic things have been played, where LIV could go in and say, let's just make a big offer and own this and take it off the table for the PGA Tour and for the other major governing bodies. And now it's ours. Like, I think it'd be an interesting strategy. I
mean, the PGA Tour kind of made the bet that like the players were not going to go to the LIV Golf Tour and stand on legacy and stand on all of these great venues in which they can, win a bunch of money, but also be remembered as the next Sam Snead or the next Byron Nelson. And I think what they figured out quickly is like, okay, everybody's got a price. Now we're getting to, I think, the part of the golf industry in which you were just talking about, in which where is their number? Like, where is Pebble Beach's number? Where is Kiowa's number? Where is the PGA of America's number? Because right now the PGA Tour is so susceptible in so many ways, and we figured this out over the last couple of years. But the fact that they do not have any major championship underneath their umbrella makes them so susceptible. Because what happens if LIV Golf decides, hey, Piffs, we're gonna go buy the PGA of America? Now, would the PGA of America ever do that? I don't know. I'm sure there's a board, and I can't imagine that Seth Waugh would be like pro that at all, being a much more of a grow the game guy versus let's make LIV Golf be successful and grow my pockets, as he's a very wealthy man as it is. But can you imagine if the LIV Golf somehow owned the PGA Championship, and they owned the Ryder Cup, and they owned all of these PGA network events of the PGA of America? Now these are all hypotheticals now, because I'm sure there's PGA of America instructors now listening like, we would never do that. It's like, well, I mean, what's the number? Because right now, like these rich wealthy PGA Tour players said, we're wealthy, but there's a number.
Well, and I think part of it too is like we're trying to do guesswork to figure out what the PIF wants to do and what the Saudis want to do on a larger scale. And I think that intentionally, all of the things that they've done, or all the the what they've tipped has been very little, right? Like they're intentionally very, very vague. And so I think that as a result, we're just kind of, going off of rumors and random reports and guesswork of like, what is it that they actually want to do? Like, I don't know. We know that they want to be in the professional golf business, or so it seems at face value. Now, whether that's meant to be any number of plays, sports washing is out there as a potential, reason why, to kind of, make their image cleaner to the world, so they can also invest in other things where they really want to, be and really return a profit. Now, there are, the ability to kind of interface with high-powered sports owners and other leagues has been floated as one sort of, entry point that LIV offers. But like, would they want to buy Bandon Dunes? Would they want to buy Sand Valley? Like, would they want to just like, buy a place like that and operate it as a resort when they're not playing their events there, and then go play a couple tournaments a year at these places that people have this huge affinity for, as these golf destinations? I don't know. I have no clue. But, it would just seem to be more interesting for them to make an investment in a place like that than saying, here we go, LIV Championship, Bolingbrook Golf Club. Like, I just, that does absolutely nothing for me. And it also kind of, in a way, makes them a little bit of a laughing stock in all the places where these things are talked about. And that's why, to me, it's like, I would love to be in those meetings. Like, how did we get to Bolingbrook? That's what I really want to know.
Well, I think what comes to mind to me, it's like, okay, you made a great point talking about like, if you created these home venues, like that was like your big draw from Adelaide. It was like, okay, that was really cool having the Rippers being a playoff with the South African team. It's like, how do you create that type of atmosphere across the world, whether you have a couple teams in the States and they have these home venues? Like, all of that makes sense. It's like, man, like you kind of just run in your head a little bit. You're thinking, man, you put Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry on the same team. And that's why like the Zerk was so cool, is that those two guys were, they looked like they're having a lot of fun. They played well and they won, and you could see the joy on their faces winning together. So like, put those two guys on the same team with the two other dudes from near Ireland. It's like, now you got maybe JT, Jordan, Max, and another guy on a team over in the States. And you're like, okay, create these home venues, and you're starting to see maybe how this could potentially come together down the road. But I see potentially the issue being the LIV Golf players keep talking so much about how they're so invested in LIV Golf. And I think one of the main reasons why is they don't want to lose a spot. They don't want to lose a spot being a captain. They don't want to lose a spot and getting all of the equity. I think the more they talk this thing up, because they're playing that side of the coin of like, okay, I'm listening to both sides. Like, where's the best place to play for me? But if it were you, right, like, isn't it smart if you've already made the jump? It's like, why would I ever not be hyping this up? Because I don't want any of the PGA Tour player guys coming in and sharing that equity in some way, shape, or form. It's like they're going to be on Brooks's team, right? Like that's like I'm starting to like see it from that eye. It's like if this starts to come together and these guys are playing in some type of team format down the road, which I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that to me is like something of like, where are these tour guys going to settle in on all that too? So that's just another hypothetical to throw at you.
Well, it's that one's really interesting because I thought about that a lot. Is like how many of these guys just immediately get ditched, and then you spent. It's just there's so many parts of this that are fascinating. You know, if and when this does come together, because I just can't see it being the case where if you're. I mean, Cleek's a bad example because I think that the first thing Greg Norman would do would be like, Martin, thanks for the years of service. Like, this is no longer your franchise. We're giving this to Rory. Like, it's now Rory, Shane Lowry, and whoever they want to be Cleeks. And we're going to play at some course in Ireland, and that's going to be their home venue. And like, you made a nice chunk of several $1 million doing what you did, and now you're gone. Like, I don't see how it is anything but that. But it is definitely, I think there's something to what you're saying too, of just they made the bet on LIV, and there was like this weird sort of dance that happened last year around the merger that wasn't really a merger, where everyone's like, oh, let's kind of play nice for a little bit and talk about the possibility that, how this could come back together. And now it's like we've almost kind of pushed back in another direction where everyone's tired of it being apart, but they're not willing to say as many nice things about the other side because they're just like, this is just, I'm getting fed up that they're not making concessions to bring this back together and vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know where we're going to be in a couple of years now. It's hard to really predict. I know you and I just want the best product for the game of golf, and whatever that looks like, we're all in for. But it's just, oh God, I feel like there's a long way to go.
There's a long way to go. And on a similar related in a way topic to the best players in the world and, the knock-on effects of world ranking points and what tournaments they're getting into. Did you see the latest Taylor Gooch comments? The shortest Taylor Gooch comments, but the latest Taylor Gooch comments this week. And what did you make of those?
It just doesn't make any sense, man.
I should probably explain here and say that there was a Smash press conference where it was all four players at the podium. Of course, Captain Brooks Koepka, Taylor Gooch, Graham McDowell, Jason Kokrak, and there was a question that was directed at Kokrak, McDowell, and Gooch that was just basically like, hey, are you guys going to try to qualify for the U.S. Open, the Open Championship? Jason and Graham went into detail about their plans to qualify and how they're going to try to get it done. And Taylor's was, I'm just not going to do it.
It just doesn't it just doesn't make sense, right? Like,
I mean, to me, yes, of course it does not make sense. I think there's part of it that just is, you could say any number of things about, and we've talked about this on the podcast as well, where it's like, there are certain things that if Taylor Gooch has a family and kids, and if part of this whole thing, as DJ said on Full Swing, is it's more money and less work. And so I'm not going to sign up for more work because the whole point of going was to do less work. If for Taylor Gooch, that was the idea, was I don't want to travel to the far-flung places of the world and play all these different tournaments to try to increase my world ranking, kind of like what Joaquin Niemann did in a successful bid to get into the Masters. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that. That's fine. But at a certain point in time, to me, it's like, this is kind of your job, dude. Like, and if you want to do the best version of your job, that is playing in the majors. And so the decision you made was a gamble in some respect, like just like any part of playing golf is a gamble, because if you stop playing good, you lose your job. Like that happens more on the tour, on the PGA Tour, than it does on LIV. So if part of the gamble that you made in going to LIV was that you weren't going to be in these majors, and now you have to qualify in these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not, when asked about it. I just don't think that gets you it definitely doesn't get you any closer to being in the events through qualification because you're not doing it. But it also doesn't get you any closer to getting an invitation from these governing bodies because you just come off as a little, petty and whiny, at least to me.
I've never worked in the corporate world, but I imagine the situation of like a young hotshot, like coming into like his boss's office and like showing off like, hey, here's my sales. Like, this is the promotion I deserve. What I've learned in life is you don't deserve anything. You have to go prove everything. And guess who the players are that have proved things on the LIV Golf Tour and have gone outside of the LIV Golf Tour to prove that I deserve to be in major championships. Now, guys like John Rahm, all these guys that were exempt, like they've proved that they deserve to be in major championships. Look at his record. His record is not good in majors. If he was a guy that was consistently in the top 10 in the majors and always contending, never missing cuts, but the reality is he was batting 50%, making cuts in the major championships in his career. I know he's a different player over the last couple of years, and he's played fantastic. And I'm not discrediting how well he's played over there because I know how good he is of a player he is, and he's a friend of mine as well. So I feel even more so talking about just how Joaquin Niemann is the prime example of a guy who, yes, he wants to be in the majors more than anything, and so does Taylor. But what he's done is he's gone and said, you know what I need to go do, if I go up to the Aussie PGA or the Aussie Open and I show up and I win, it's going to have to continue to turn heads and say, you know what, this guy is winning not only on the LIV Golf Tour, but he's making an effort to play in more sanctioned official world golf ranking events to try to earn his way in. If he gets close, you know what, we'll bump him over the edge. And that's what a good boss does. And that's what these majors would have done. But if you're not going to show any effort, you're going to say, you know what, this is good enough for me. Like, you should give me in. It's like, that's, what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
100%. And like, to completely be fair to Taylor, it's like, one, we don't know what his life looks like outside of golf, and it may just be a decision he's making. Like, hey, he could just be completely at peace with the fact that he's not playing in majors, and he's saying, this is a decision I'm making either way, and that's fine, and he may not even be trying to be petty by saying, I'm not, in sort of the curt fashion that he delivered that line. Who knows? I don't want to project too much on what is actually going on in his brain and outside of his professional golf world. It's just strange. Like, I just think that it's, you never know how a little bit of effort would come across to some of these governing bodies, and if he was willing to kind of just say, hey, like, this is a decision they made, and just maybe try to just find a line that sounds a little more humble than some of the things he said. You just never know how that will come across, because to your point, he's absolutely good enough to play in all these major championships.
He's good enough to be a one and done pick for one of us as well. I would 1,000% consider him to be a one and done pick of mine. So I think that goes to say, it's like, yeah, I think he should be playing in these majors, but you just go play 36 holes. Like, how hard is that to do? Like, it's not difficult. Graham McDowell's doing it in come on.
Yeah, doesn't Jason Kokrak has a young family. Like, that's the thing. Is like, I'm really trying to give Taylor the benefit of the doubt in a lot of these situations, but unless there's something going on here that I'm totally missing, like the play does not come off great. And
he's made so much money over there. It's a joke.
Well, let's kind of go down that road, because this is another thing that we talked about where you were like, I'm just curious lifetime what some of these guys have made. And so this is, I found sort of,
this is like before their contracts of just like selling their company before going over too.
So this is through LIV Golf Miami. So what you have to factor into these numbers is adding in the Adelaide event and the Singapore event that just finished. So we can even do some like back of the napkin.
Taylor made $1 million in Singapore. So add $1 million to that.
So DJ is first all time because he won the 2022 individual. So he's earned $53 million plus whatever he earned the last 2 tournaments. So, he finished top 10 in Singapore, earned a little bit more. So he's got 53 million plus.
You forget there's not as many events as well. I think that I keep thinking, like, when I see them make as much money as they do, that they're playing a full PGA Tour schedule, but they're really playing about, 3/4 of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If that.
Yeah. And so it gets watered down like a little bit, but you get like that bonus team kicker as well, where, and who knows the financials behind that, because, we've seen reports that the players don't actually get a full like quarter cut of that. Like, it could be structured differently for captains, or if there is some sort of sponsor that has an ownership interest in the team, or it could be reinvested into like team infrastructure stuff. I don't know the specifics, but it may not all go to them. But still, that's like a little kind of nice little, hey, I could play terrible this weekend, but my team can make a bunch of money, finish on the podium, and I get a pocket that. So Taylor is second all time in earnings, 52.4 million. So now it's like 53.4 or 53.5, really.
So much money. It's so much money.
Cam Smith, third all time. 33.6, and then
33.6. Those two guys are 20 mil. I imagine that's where the cockiness comes from. It's just like, dude, I've made $20 million more than the next best guy on our tour.
And Cam just picked up another 1.8 this last weekend. And I'm pretty sure Ripper won each of these last 2 events. So you got to factor in that money too. So he's probably like north of 35 million with 25 events played.
That speaks
that's
but does
unreal.
That not just speak to how well the Taylor's played over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're here talking about, I think this was Brooks' 4th win on the LIV Tour, I believe is what they said.
I think so.
And he's 5th on. Well, he'll move into 4th all time on the money list. He'll nudge above Brandon Grace, who was 4th. But so he won $4 million here. So he'll actually be just
how
below
much has
Cam.
Brandon Grace won over there?
Brandon Grace has made $28.6 million, not including the last 2 weeks. I mean, now that guy that's poster boy for like the guy who went on a whim, not a household name, great player, but just not like not a big name.
Player, dude. He's a major player, man. That dude was always like making cuts in the majors and then like contending on years,
Right. But never in your wildest dreams, right? Because you said he's gonna, through his first 28 events on LIV, he's gonna make effectively $1 million per event if you average it out. I mean, that's crazy. That's unreal. That's unbelievable. I mean,
really
every
good.
time he's averaged $1 million every time he's teed up on LIV. It's unbelievable. But yeah, Brooks will jump ahead of him. Brooks should have right around the same amount as Cam, maybe slightly less, maybe in like the 33 million range when all said and done from the last 2 events. So he's played 28 events and earned like 33, 34. So I mean, the point you're making, which is like, yeah, you probably can feel like I can say whatever because, in Taylor Gooch's case, like I made $53 million. Like, yeah, at this point, if the majors don't want to let me in, cool, I'll just go make another 53 million and then I'll have like 100 million. So, I mean, I guess it all just depends on what's important to you in life. And money is very important. I'm not over here. Like, I think legacy is like, it's a cool thing. It's a great thing, but money's really, really important. And they're making a lot of it over there.
Can you give me the rest of the top 10 and then also give me the bottom of the board?
Yes. So and then again, this is just we're 2 events behind, but this just gives you a rough picture. Peter Uihlein, 6th on that list.
My God, what a move for Pete. Come on.
25 mil, 25.3.
He was going back and forth between the Corrales and Puerto Rico, like when he had got the move over. He was never on the Platinum Tour at the PGA Tour. He was always like just playing the regular schedule.
So that's 25.3 through 27 events. Now he's played 29.
Let's go, Pete. I love Pete.
Bryson is 7th, 25.1 mil through 26. And so, add a few more. He's played 28 now, but, right around that 25 mil mark. Then Patrick Reed is 8th with just shy of 25 mil. Joaquin Niemann is 9th with 22.3 mil. And Sergio Garcia is 10th with 20.2 million. So that's it.
Can you pick out one name as well that sticks out like towards the bottom, like maybe not like towards the back of the last guys that have done the worst, but maybe a name that's like, man, they have not played well over there.
I mean, I think the one that it's almost the most obvious one is like Pat Perez is 15th on that money list with $16.4 million.
Wow.
And has not played. It's not like he's played terrible golf, but I feel like every time during it on, it's like, oh, there's Pat Perez, putting up a big number, and he'll, he's played well in situations.
That's playing well though.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you was like way. Really, really bad,
like top, like a more of a player that was a big signing that that hasn't performed. Sorry, I didn't, but that's the opposite end of the spectrum. Got it.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, at the very, wow. I mean, they have everybody on this list. So I need to
you need to filter just a little bit. Like who's played, who's like who's in your
event
3
threshold. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd say, my favorite is always Siwon Kim, who played, who was 50th all time on the money list, who played 21 events and made $4.3 million. And that guy was like firing 80s left and right, like nobody's business, dude. It was just and walked away with a nice little chunk of change. So good for you, C1. Martin Keimer is right above him at 4.5 mil, but I would say a guy who, I mean, you could, I mean, I know it's later in his career, but Phil has only made 5.8 million with 27 events played.
That's pretty bad.
He's just on the back end of his career. He even said that this week. I mean, it's like he's just,
I did see that. Yeah. You know what wouldn't surprise me with Phil? Because he's always been rumored to want to do TV. I think they're going to sign him to just a buttload of money, and he'll just be the main analyst over there.
And he'd be great at it. He'd be fantastic at it. I mean, Phil is such an entertaining human being.
Would that surprise you?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, I think Phil moves into some sort of business advisory, he will have some non-playing role at LIV, whether he's like a non-playing captain of a team, whether he's a part of the broadcast, he will be involved in some way, shape, or form there without a doubt. But TV's a great call. I mean, that booth right now is Arlo White, David Faraday, I think Don Boulay. Like there's sort of a mixed bag in there. Suan Hang. But I mean, you stick Phil in there with Arlo, and David Faraday. I mean, that's a really, really good booth. It's a really good booth.
Yeah.
That's a good shout. Yeah.
We're going to bookmark that.
Let's bookmark that. And we've now, we just, I don't know how many minutes we did where we just got lost in the career earnings of LIV, but it's interesting. I mean, it really is interesting to you hear like the funny money, kind of thrown out there, but then looking at a hard and fast list of tallying it all up, you're like, wow, that is a lot of money for not a lot of golf.
One other player I just want you to check out. I'm just generally kind of curious on how he's played. Bubba Watson.
Bubba Watson was also down there for me in that, Phil category-ish. Now, he missed a lot of time because he had that injury that was coming back.
Oh, he did?
It was a knee thing. Yeah.
It was like year one.
Yeah,
I think that was
the
year
latest
one.
start. He was like a non-playing captain for Ranch Yost.
That's
before.
right.
So he's only as of LIV Miami, he'd only played in 19 events and he'd earned $7.1 million. So a little bit more than Phil, but again, kind of feels like he's not playing his best golf anymore, and that's okay. A lot of people are Bubba fans, and that's why they go watch him over there. But
the big thing, Charlie, I think is going to be after this year. So the big quotes today was that Greg Norman was told by Yasser is that this LIV Golf, it will continue on past when he dies and through the rest of his family. I'm like, okay, that's a little open-ended, but I'm just kind of wondering, with a lot of these contracts are up at the end of this year. So there could be, I think, a ton of movement with what we've kind of known with LIV Golf of like who all the players are, and maybe a good amount of them will get re-signed. But I tell you what, I think they're going to be aggressive this offseason especially if they don't try to come together to get the PGA Tour players involved.
You're saying that the LIV's going to try to be aggressive with paying those guys to re-sign. Yeah,
no,
bigger.
I think they'll be more aggressive towards the PGA Tour players because they know a lot of these LIV Golf players are just like,
it's their last hurrah.
Like,
yeah,
please, like
back, yeah.
I'll sign for nothing. Just let me play. Like these contracts. Like I think there's a lot of players that are sitting ducks that are hoping that PGA Tour players won't come over.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one because I could see that in a lot of different ways. Like I think it'd be the smartest thing ever for the PGA Tour to, when these contracts expire, just let all these marquee names walk back, no penalties. Like I know that's such a tough pill to swallow for the guys that remain loyal to the tour. And I just hope that they're creatively finding ways to compensate for that, where they're like, all right, we're giving, like the list that came out of all those sort of solidarity payments made to the guys that have been on tour forever, the payments to Tiger and Rory and JT and Jordan and all those guys. Like, I know that, whatever it was, like, I think we said JT was like $30 million. So like, that was like, we're talking about on course earnings here, which are different from the contracts that these guys all reportedly made. But that 30 million effectively would put him at fourth or fifth on the LIV career earnings list without having hit a single shot. So that's worth something, right? Now, we're talking about, Cam Smith. I think the offer was reported in the 100 million range. So Cam's actually made $135 million there instead of just, the 35 that he's earned on the course. But my point being that I think that the PGA Tour players would be smart to say, as tough of a pill as it might be to swallow, if we let these guys come back and we create some structure for them to come back, we could gut the LIV Tour. Because all those guys have made all their money, and so they can go fill up their bank accounts and feel like, I don't need to do the security thing anymore. Now I want to play real competitive golf again at the best venues in the world against the best players in the world. And I come back on this tour, and now I have no penalties. So it's not like there's any barriers coming back. I don't have to go play the Korn Ferry Tour or whatever. I think that would be the smartest strategic business move from the PGA Tour, instead of saying, if you guys want to come back, there are penalties involved, because then you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your ability to hurt your competitor,
I want to be a part of the list making of like who's the last guy that doesn't get like the full exemptions into, let's say, the players or whatever the mark, or just say the signature events. Like does the tour make Taylor go qualify and go to
That would be amazing. They're like, Taylor, you can come back with exemptions, but you have to do a year of U.S. Open qualifying. Like you had to do it. Like it's like a I don't know, not a hazing ritual, but just like something like that, where it's like, hey, buddy, like you have to go do this thing. It'd be hilarious. It'd be a really hilarious bit.
I mean, even if like you name the 10 guys on the top of their points and career money, it's like, dude, like pretty much all of that top 10, maybe give or take another couple guys. It's like, those are your dudes. Bring them back. Let them play. Yep. Let's get those guys back on the signature events, and then like funnel in kind of whoever you want throughout the lower tour, which is what I hope would happen.
Yeah, and honestly, as you say that, like that's exactly, if you took the money list right now, so DJ, Gooch, Cam, Brandon Grace, like you knew there were going to be certain names in there that are like, oh, that's a weird one, or like not the most marketable one, but they played well and they deserve it. So like Brandon Grace probably is one of those. Brooks Koepka, Peter Uihlein, probably one of those. Bryson, Patrick Reed, Joaquin Niemann, Sergio Garcia. There's your top 10, right? And then you probably go through and you cherry pick a few names who just showed up, so they haven't had time to earn. But obviously you're letting John Rahm come back. Yeah. I'm sure, I mean, Phil would actually be a really interesting case, given all these done to burn bridges. But, Tyrrell Hatton probably gets to come back in some form or fashion. Maybe there are pathways created for young stars that you want to kind of do right by, like Caleb Surratt or guys like that. But I think that, that's, I mean, I just gave you, I mean, let's exclude Caleb Surratt. I just gave you 12 names, and you're really not missing too many from that list. You're definitely making some cuts, but like you're not missing too many.
Man, it's just like so crazy. Like, so let's say the PGA Tour says we're going to go another year without you guys coming back. And what's going to happen? There's going to be so much pressure. And I think the LIV strategy from that standpoint is, okay, they've stopped working hand in hand with the official world golf ranking to try to get their tour sanctioned to be able to get points. We read about it this week as well. So like, what are the only things they can do? It's like, okay, well, we can just buy more players. That's the one thing that they can do is they can buy more players. And then the other part of it too is that I think unless the PGA Tour changes to a structure in which there's less events and their leaderboards make sense, they can wait on just wait out the ratings, because the ratings have been the one thing that the LIV Golf Tour can look at and be like, all right, you need us. But let's say the PGA Tour says, all right, we're going to remodel our whole structure to where when you turn on the PGA Tour, you're going to recognize these guys on the leaderboard. And then that would be the strategic advantage for the PGA Tour side, in which now it's like, all right, if we can keep our players happy with the equity, we have strong leaderboards, less events. Now these players are in a tough position over at LIV that, like Jon Rahm, who's hoping that the PGA Tour caves and brings him back so that he can double dip. But he's in contract with the LIV Golf Tour. He's still got to play a full schedule. So he's going to play what he thought would be, like Patrick Reed mentioned or whoever it was, that they're going to be playing less over there. Now these guys, if they're going to want to play all of these signature events and the LIV Golf Tour events, which they have to play in, they're going to be playing double.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. All the cards that, it's almost like there are several things happening, like that there's obviously the negotiation, the discussion that you hope is happening in good faith between, LIV and really the PIF and the PGA Tour and SSG. And
you
so
think it's happening? I don't know if it's happening.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying for the sake of discussion, like you like to think that that's happening, but then underneath that is both those sides individually creating their own contingency plans for, like here's the discussion we're having joint. That's like, what does this look like when it comes together? And then separately, it's like, how can we go and undercut that other guy as much as we possibly can to make them fail, to kind of bring them to their knees a little bit, so like we can make them do whatever we want in this negotiation. I mean, the whole thing, I even feel bad, that we've gone this deep in the episode, and I'm sure there's so many people that are so tired of hearing about this, and they're just fatigued and they want golf to be back together. And that's where we are too. But I think that, you got to have the discussion, especially after weeks like this, because it's just, if anything, this isn't like us, having some sort of deep dive of how to solve LIV or this or that. It's just looking at this past weekend and saying, there's got to be a better world of professional golf than that, where you have a meh course with an even more meh leaderboard, and then you have a star-studded leaderboard playing in the middle of the night on a course nobody cares about in a weird team format with 3 rounds. It's just like, it's the least efficient and the least fan-friendly model that could possibly exist. And quite frankly, it's like, it's tough to even do a show on it because it's so disjointed. You're like, how do we even talk about this? And so, like, if you're out there and you've listened to this whole thing and you're like, I'm just so sick of hearing about this, like, we're just as sick of like this being the reality. And I hope that we get to a better place. So it's like, we're coming off a week where it's like, yeah, we're heading into the big signature event before the major, and we're coming off a really cool team event that combined PGA Tour and LIV players in a really unique way in a home game setting, whether it's Australia or South Africa or whatever. That would be great, but that's obviously not where we are right now. So
if Arnold Palmer was still here, and I sat at a table with him and had to explain to him what professional golf looks like right now, he would be like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Right. What do you mean? What do you mean Jon Rahm wasn't at Bay Hill this year? Wait, where was he? He was in Doral? Wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, it would. And you know, it's so interesting because I think part of that discussion traces into efforts that, you know, there were numerous breakaway tour efforts made by the star players in the game because they felt like they were worth more than the opportunities that the current, you know, the existing tour is creating for them. So it's actually like not a unique thing that's being done. It's just the way that it's torn the game apart. Yep. And in all those previous iterations of the breakaway tours, like those tours never really came to fruition in a significant way. It was leverage and bargaining chips. And then it was like, okay, let's fix this tour. But like, this is the time where it broke and it didn't work that way. And now here we are doing this. So
I mean, the tour was never going to change as fast as Phil Mickelson wanted it to change. And I think it's all changing for the better for the PGA Tour. I know it sounds absolutely hysterical for me to say that, but they were never going to change. So the purses are really good right now. These guys are making a ton of money. And is it absolutely miserable right now? Yes. But I mean, shoot, some of these events, like I don't even know what they made of the Byron this week, but these guys are overpaid right now for the fields. So, I mean, take it while it lasts.
Yeah. Taylor Pendrith earned $1.7 million as a winner share this week at the Byron Nelson. So
overpaid based off probably what the ratings are going to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be a good rating this week. So that brings us back actually to the PGA Tour and where I think it makes the most sense to kind of wrap up this week's episode and then as we play it ahead of the Wells Fargo is just first of all reviewing our one and done picks. So Smylie, I have to congratulate you on you picked a Canadian.
I picked a Canadian.
You picked a Canadian that was celebrating on the 18th green after the last hole was played. Just so happened that he was celebrating watching his buddy win. Mackenzie Hughes, I believe, had a T41 for 12.214 FedEx Cup points. So, I mean, to be fair to you, and I'm curious if you have other thoughts or comments you'd like to make, but like, I think the weather just made this a really wonky week because we're already coming in and we're like it's wide open off the tee. It's, you know, even though you're hitting a lot, it's a long course. You're hitting a lot of long irons in. You're doing it off of the most perfect Zoys you could perfectly hit, possibly hit off of. And you're getting in the greens and like, okay, they're taking on a bunch of rain. They're soft. So like you can, hold greens much easier. So it's like, it should just theoretically be easier for anybody to strike the ball well enough to just make it into a putting contest. And I guess, that's why I like the strategy behind your Mackenzie Hughes pick. But it feels like in a way, it almost made it too easy to bring everyone else into it.
It doesn't test the best players, man.
Yeah.
And you don't have the best players there either. So, and that's nothing against all the guys there. There's tons of amazing players, but it's just where we're at right now that, the Byron Nelson, that's probably the weakest that field has ever been. It was the second worst rated field of the year behind, or just in front of full field event before Mexico Open.
Full field's not even the correct term. Like a non-opposite field. Like if you remove the two opposite field events, second weakest field of the year behind the Mexico Open. Yes.
Yeah. Which Jake Knapp almost won both. So credit to our boy. It's nap time. I was cheering for Jake. Yeah. Just didn't get it going today, but wasn't shocked to see him play well there. That's a perfect course for him.
Right. Like just a bomber that, can create a bunch of birdie eagle opportunities for himself. And
I think this year's been really great for him. Obviously won in Mexico, but I think the events just throughout the year, it's been a good learning curve for him to figure out what's the next steps for him to be able to compete on golf courses in which he's got to still like drive it far, but like rein it in, hit fairways, to be able to kind of like open up the rest, keep his strength, which is his ability to hit the long ball.
Yeah. I mean, and Jacob probably the first person to tell you that like the way he played on Sunday in both the event he won and in the final group this week, like was probably not his best stuff. Like he scraped it around on Sunday at the Mexico Open, with some big misses and was able to win that golf tournament. And so I'm sure he'd tell you that he'd like to play better on Sundays in general. But I mean, the fact that he's putting himself there, Mexico Open, you give yourself a 4-shot lead going into Sunday, you have a little bit of room to play with. So, So my one and done pick was, of course, Siwoo Kim. He had a T13 for
Good pick.
Just a solid,
Good pick.
Just like, knowing you're at home, you haven't got any food yet, and you're like, I got BB-Go dumplings in the freezer. So let me go hit some BB-Go's. That was Siwoo got me 53.143 FedEx Cup points. So that the season total now is I have 2,138 points and some change. You have 1,669 points.
Really impressive for both. I mean, you're just behind Scotty Scheffler, and I'm like top 10 in the FedEx Cup, so I can't complain.
You might be top 5. I have to go back and cross-reference it, but that leads us to a signature event where there are more FedEx Cup points on the line, and
Big
one
week.
in which Scotty will not be playing, which is interesting. So this goes back to something you discussed on the show, which was that you would not be shocked to just see Scotty play the Heritage and just wait until the next major to tee it up. We've not seen anything public from Scotty or Meredith as to the arrival of the baby. I believe this was supposed to be the due date this weekend. Mm-hmm. So I don't know when we're going to find out. Maybe part of the reason why he didn't enter the Wells Fargo was because the due date got pushed a little bit. But yeah, so we have a Scotty-less signature event, which really opens it up to some other challengers to bolster us in the one and done, of course, but also just kind of pick up some form heading into the second major of the season. So, I mean, do you want to chat a little bit about this field and who you like here, or do you want to delve into it is your pick to make for one and done this week?
Well, I mean, the field is kind of what we've been seeing at all the signature events. There's nothing really to get into. We're kind of down the road now. We've had, I don't know let's see, it was Pebble Beach. We've had what else have we had? Signature events. Is this number 4? It feels about like number 4.
Pebble Beach, Heritage, and I mean, it depends on how like Century was technically one, but it was not like a standalone signature event. In terms of signature events, I think it was. I think it's just API as well. What else am I missing? I think I'm missing
players.
Player, but again, player is one of those weird ones. It's like not it's a standalone thing.
Anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry to get you off topic there, but I feel like there's so many players now that I've been kind of like saving for this time of the year. It's like I got some guys that I'm like ready to burn the card on. And I feel like for me this week, it just makes way too much sense to pick a player that's had a ton of success here. And I'm taking Rory.
Yeah. It's a great pick.
It just feels right. Like I'm willing to bet more that he's going to win at Wells Fargo versus winning at Valhalla. It's like the pressure is like less on here. So it's like, let's see, he's going to be so dialed in, so ready to go, like get his game ready before Valhalla. So like, I'm going to bet on that. Right.
No, I think it's a really good pick, and I think it's it's one that if you're looking at strategy, like if you're really trying to get deep in the weeds of this one and done strategy, like if you're playing for FedEx Cup points, the signature event, like this is a great way to make up some. Of course, it's not a major, but it's not far off in terms of the point distribution. So I like this pick a lot. This is an interesting spot to be in. I'm trying to kind of figure out which way I want to go here, because on the one hand,
I think it's one of two players you got to pick.
Okay.
And I will name those one of two players after you don't pick them.
I'll say I'm kind of in between Wyndham and Max Homa.
Those are the two players. So
how about that? Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like. I just feel like here's my line of thinking is that Wyndham has been the second best player on tour this season. I think it's fair to say, other than Scotty Scheffler, right? And so to me, it's like he's the defending champ here. It's finally a Scotty-less field in a top tier event. He almost won he won the AT&T. What am I saying? But it was like a 3-round, 54 hole short event because of weather. But like, it feels like, pick back up right where you left off and you win one without Scotty in the field, it should just be a slam dunk. But Max is, also has won the Wells Fargo in the past. Although I think did he win it here? Or did he win it when they moved to Eagle Point?
No, he won it. He won it Wells or Quail Hollow because
He won at Quail.
Because Brian Harmon won at Eagle Point.
Was Brian Harmon at Eagle Point? I was getting my years mixed up there. And a guy that like is I feel like is about to have a really solid turn of form here soon. But the thing I'm weighing against is like, do I want to use one of those guys at another major? But we had this whole discussion where we just talked about how this is equivalent. So, oh man, I think. Golly, yeah. I think I'm gonna go Wyndham here.
That's a good pick.
Wyndham Clark.
It's the right pick. It's the right pick.
Yeah.
There's
I was considering Max.
Plenty of other guys that we could have obviously taken. I think if you're looking down the board, I think a player I was really considering, and if he was probably in maybe earlier season form in which he was in, I would have taken Sam Burns. He played better than anybody at that President's Cup, made more birdies than anybody. And I just really feel like it's a perfect course fit for him. I think Sam Burns is a great pick to win the Wells Fargo this week.
Yeah, I love that one as well. That was the first place my head went was like, let's go back to that President's Cup and see if there are guys there that could be nice to kind of plug in there. I mean, obviously the entire American team had success, but like who else on that team kind of pops, that could be a good pick here. And Sam was obviously, Scotty did not play great that week. It was Sam that was kind of carrying him for large stretches of that.
I have a question too, and I assume that Quail, and I should know this because I played, but I think it's all Bermuda greens for the tournament. But for the President's Cup, I know it was Bermuda, and during May, everything's overseeded wall to wall. So there is a difference in a bit in how that course plays. It plays longer in the springtime than which it played during the President's Cup, which was Bermuda jumpy wise and probably much firmer and faster. So I think it's a totally different golf course, and maybe can kind of throw a little bit of those results out the window. But Cam Young, to me, this seems like his week as well for a player that has had a great year, a lot of top tens, and it's been right there. It's like, Cam Young, when are you going to break through? Is this your week?
That's a great call, actually, of just a guy that, perfect fit, played here in the President's Cup, due for a big win. Almost in some ways, there are parallels there to like, we said this for so long about Will Zalatoris, and like then he wins a playoff event. Unfortunately, he also then has a back injury that same week that makes him pull out of those playoffs, and then he has to go through that whole process in the months and years following. But just we're waiting for him to win an event, and it's like this elevated stage against the best players. Cam Young's played well in those events. Almost won the Genesis a few years ago, the one that Joaquin Niemann won in a really stocked field. So this feels like I love this week as a breakthrough for Cam.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Cam Young contend at both of these next two events. I think these two courses fit his game like really well. I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Young wins this. Like if he wins this week, I wouldn't be surprised if he went like back to back. Like once like you rip the Band-Aid off and the seal is open and the floodgates open for a player like him, I see like wins in bunches. And these are like, this is the time of the year. The schedule just makes sense. Like the golf course fits are perfect for Quail Hollow and Valhalla, two courses. It's just perfect for him. And then I think about Ludwig Oberg and I'm like, crap, he's probably going to do the same. I'm like, why am I not picking Ludwig here? There's so many great options this week.
Oh, and then two others I'd love just to kind of pick your brain on a little bit is, Sahith Theegala's due for a Smylie Show bump. So I know we like Sahith the PGA, but again, guy who's really long. Yeah. And then Min Woo. I know Min Woo was not part of that President's Cup squad for the international team, but T15 this last week of the CJ Cup. And I feel like he's due in the same way that we're talking about Cam Young. He's a guy that's going to break through and have a big win, and looking for places like that. Do you like Sahith or Min Woo at Quail Hollow this week?
I'm just thinking a little bit about. I think both places are like you have to be able to middle and long iron your way around both places because both golf courses are long. They're both going to play long. You have to stripe it. Like you have to be a really good mid iron player. Got to drive it far, which I think both players do. I would probably say that both have got to get their iron game. Like both have to have like really good iron weeks. But if they do, they totally could. I'm a little like I would say Minwoo's iron game has been the thing that's probably held him back the most, and it's just his ability to kind of drive it in the fairway enough. Talent's obviously there, but I think just having that like consistency, like we see from like Max Homa, like dude, his iron game is just like whoosh. Or I mean, Scotty's obviously the guy we judge everything off of, but I think I'm wondering with like Minwoo's game, like is there that one thing that can just like take him over the edge for that 1 week? It just seems like every week it's like just something's like a little off and nothing's like great.
Right. Yeah. And just putting 4 good rounds together. Like we saw that in the Players 2 years ago, right? Where he was in that final group with Scotty and just, had a rough day, but just stringing 4 solid rounds together where he goes low and then gets the thing done. So yeah, ones to keep an eye on for sure. And I think at this point, I mean, we've covered a variety of different, we really covered one topic at length and then now delving a little bit in this here, but just any thoughts on what you think we're going to see from Scotty. We're going to do an in-depth preview of the PGA Championship, and we're going to do it from Louisville. We're excited that we're still kind of finalizing our plans for our PGA Championship week, but we got some cool places lined up, some cool content lined up. We're really excited about, and we're going to kind of delve into PGA Championship preview while we're live and on site there. But just if not in the field this week, I mean, I don't think we have any concerns about Scotty Scheffler, but do you think we see any no rust whatsoever on Scotty?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I think it's a good. You and I know the dad life, and we know how hard it is to like kind of to turn away 1 week after having your first child. So I think there's so many great opportunities to look elsewhere other than Scotty at the PGA. So I'm already like just on looking at the LIV Golf leaderboard, which was just crazy good. It's like Brooks Koepka winning. It's like him winning in Singapore, heading into a major. It's like, well, all right. So we know Brooks is going to have a chance on Sunday. It's like, who else is going to be there?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm excited to kind of go in depth on that, especially after seeing, what I want to do is I want to look at the Wells Fargo leaderboard against what we just saw in Singapore and start mixing all those names together and saying, who are we going to kind of dial in? I mean, I'm hot on Ludwig right now. I think, there are a couple of names we're kicking around. So we will be certain to do that on the back end of the Wells Fargo leading into PGA Championship week. But I think that about covers it for us tonight, Smylie. Bit of a change of pace this week, but excited to kind of get back in the signature event swing of things. And then, of course, second major of the year. So that's what we have for you. We appreciate you spending the time watching and listening, and we'll be back here. Another interview we're excited about, we think, midweek. Is it fair to tease that? Or would you do it? Yeah.
I don't know.
You never know. You never know with us. Yeah. So just stay tuned. Stay tuned. There will be some conversation in your feed this week, Smylie, and someone who we're excited about if we can make that happen. So we will talk to you then.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our lovely fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too. So please keep it up.
For all the good people of YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the